What is shaking, y'all? It's your boy Marc Cordone, Golden Mike, episode 56. You know what? I'm probably doing everything wrong when it comes to speaking right now, what I'm doing with my hands, but I never feel like I'm doing anything wrong when I'm around Soness Stevens. Today, we are going to talk about something that a lot of people want to do, but don't get to follow through on, and Soness helps you follow through on that.
Skydiving!
That's skydiving. That is taking your TEDx or your big idea and bringing it to a larger stage, bringing it to a TEDx, bringing it to a TED. Soness, it's like 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. over in Tokyo where you are, right?
It's 9.
It's 9? Okay, so...
So we're in my sweet spot. It's 9 o'clock.
Right on. We're in my sweet spot at 8 p.m. in the evening. Soness Stevens, TED speaker, TEDx speaker, 1 time, not 2 time, 3-time TED speaker, head speaking coach. She was once the head speaking coach in Asia. And now I believe you've gone out into the world. Like, what is it? Like 100 to, like, how many hundreds of people?
Oh gosh, 120 TED and TEDx speakers. And then I have about, I don't know, I can't even count how many speakers I have around the world. Just speaking.
120 speakers that she coaches. Also this, get this, y'all. Not only does she coach from the front end, but from the back end, she has been able to be the TEDx head speaking coach for multiple events. So she's seen your applications that you put in. She's seen the other side of things. She's worked with y'all, right? And not only that, but she's the professor at 2 universities. This is such an honor to have you, Soness. Welcome to the Golden Mike Live. It's great to see you.
I'm so happy to be here, Marc. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, so for those of you who have not met me, my name is Marc Cordone. I am the founder of the Make Money Coaching Program, but more importantly, I am a positive psychology coach. I know it's July 4th, y'all. You might have sparklers in your hand. So I'm gonna bring positive psychology down to 2 things. Are you feeling happy on a daily basis? And are you living life to its full purpose on a daily basis? Now, Soness Stevens.
Yes.
Feeling happy and living life to your full purpose.
On a daily basis? You know, Marc, I'm gonna
right now, 9 a.m. over in
9
Japan.
Yes. If you ask me on a daily basis, I'm going to be straight up with you. No, I don't believe I live happily on a daily basis, because I believe that one of my speakers, I love her, love. I'm in love with my speakers, as you know, because I totally adore you too. And I love my speakers. And one of my speakers, Justine Frokler, she gave this talk at TEDx. Actually, she had like 2 sequentially. So we had to really, really work it hard to make sure that she could fit 1 TEDx and then a month later, a second TEDx. But one of her talks is called The Permission of the And. And I love this concept. It gives you the ability to feel more than one emotion simultaneously. So while we may be having struggles, we may be feeling sadness, depression, anxiety, whatever those feelings are. And I don't want to name one as positive or negative, because I don't believe that there's any emotion that's negative or positive, because there's so many emotions that spur us into action. But let's take a look. So she says that we can feel grief and acceptance. We can feel loss and love. We can feel all of these emotions. And if we give ourselves a permission in the end, I highly recommend you check out that talk. Maybe Marc will let me add a link in the comments later on and you can check it out. But I love this concept. So Marc, no, I don't feel extremely ecstatic on a daily basis. I'm a very positive person and I'm a super resilient person, but I don't feel happy on a daily basis. I feel multiple emotions simultaneously.
I absolutely love it. I love your honesty. We already got some people popping in. Jorge, it is good to see you from Puerto Rico, brother. Jorge is the greatest of all time, giving us some hearts. Donneray, it's good to see you. Fiona loves Soness. Who doesn't?
Fiona, thank you so much for joining today.
We got Mike Favor tuning in, who you just met on Tuesday.
I just met Michael. Michael, the silent type.
The silent Mike Favor coming out of the shadows to say hi. It is great to see everybody today. And Soness, thank you for doing that. Soness, I want you to put up your hands with me, and I want you to make a little heart, right? So for those of you who are in a state right now where
It's
you're
so funny. I
feeling
explain in
great.
such a Japanese way.
So
You're like this, and I'm like,
no, your heart
I'm
is
so
bigger than mine, because your definition of heart is this, right? It's
yeah. So I live in Tokyo. I live in Japan. I've lived here for half my life. So for the past 20 years, I've been, I practice Buddhism and like Buddhist philosophies. I'm the weird combination of Christian meets Buddhist, and so practicing Zazen meditation to start integrating those philosophies. But we talk about heart as kokoro, and when you touch your heart, it's where it's here. But in Japanese, heart is actually your mind and your heart integrated into one. So yeah, I'll make a big one right here.
Well, I wanted to throw this out there for those of you who are feeling that integration of the head and the heart right now. Let your heart beat fully, and let's see some hearts, whether you're watching live or the replay. Soness has a big old heart pumping right now. Now, here's the other thing, y'all. For those of you who are watching live or watching the replay, a lot of people think that positive psychology, Soness figured it out already, is about the craps and giggles. Taco Tuesday every single day. I'm happy every single day. I never feel sadness. I never feel the end of being depressed and fully functioning, right? And they have this misnomer that positive psychology is this one thing or another. Positive psychology is about the ups, downs, and all arounds of life, and gives you the permission to feel that. Now, if you woken up today and you're like, you know what? Maybe a couple days ago, if you would have asked me if I was feeling great and living to my full purpose, I would have said, heck yes. I would have said, heck yes. But I just woke up and I lost somebody. I'm sad. I'm straight up sad, and I have to keep on pushing. Or you also come in and say, you know what? I've been working the same job for 15 years that I had a passion for, and all of a sudden, I'm not passionate for it. And I'm feeling shame or guilt because I feel like I've outgrown it. I'm letting people down. That is okay. That is part of your hero's journey, y'all. Your heart beats just like Soness, mine, Fiona's, Michael Faber's, everybody who's watching right now. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up, because you're living life. You don't have to love it sometimes, but you're living life. So Soness, sounds like you want to say something.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point, because we talk a lot about, everyone's marketing happiness. And I think I show up in the world as, a positive version of myself every day.
Sure.
And that's a decision that we consciously make. How do I choose to show up? My mom, Marc and I have talked about this. So I kind of feel like we're just having a regular conversation. My mom suffers from a mental illness, or she has as long as I've been alive. And we did this practice when I was with her last August in Connecticut. And she wakes up very angry and bitter in the morning. She's got a lot of stuff happening, and she's frustrated because her life has not turned out the way that she thought it would turn out. And I appreciate that. My life didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to turn out. It went in many different directions. I'm very happy with where it's gone. At the same time, sometimes life doesn't turn out the way that you wanted it to, whether it's a disappointment about losing a friend or a family member, disappointment about your job, or disappointment in losing your babies, raising my hand on that one, suffering through multiple miscarriages. And there's always those points of disappointment. And one thing that I asked her every day when she'd wake up, and she's like, I need my blah, blah, blah. And like, Mom, is that how you want to show up in the world today? She's like, I've been suffering, and I get it. And in Buddhism, we talk about suffering. When one person suffers, the whole of humanity suffers on a cellular level. So the question is, Mom, how do you want to show up today? Who do you want to be? And she said, Marc, this is my mom. She's very, very dramatic. And she's like, oh, I want to be who I was 40 years ago. I was a star. She was a jazz singer. I was a star. And I was charismatic. I said, well, Mom, that person is gone. That was 40 years ago. Who do you choose to be today? Do you choose to be a person who shows up with love, gratitude, kindness? Who do you choose to be? She said, well, Drew makes me angry. That's my first name. I shouldn't have said that. I'm like, yes, I hear that. How do you want to show up today with him? I choose kindness. I'm like, okay, Mom, I choose kindness. And I stayed in her one-room apartment with her for a month, and every day sleeping on an air mattress on the floor. And every day we woke up and did the same practice. Who do you choose to be today, Mom? I choose to be thankful. And interestingly enough, over a month, she started to change. She became lighter, less demanding, less angry, less berating. And she turned into somebody who was the lighter version of herself again.
Yeah.
And it's a gradual practice every day.
Yeah. It does sound like a cyclical thing that you don't just choose once and then that's you. It sounds like you get to birth yourself multiple times over and over and over. Soness, I wanted to ask this of you. I'm reflecting on it as well. And for those of you who are watching live, I want you to answer this with me if you feel comfortable with typing it in. Please, I want this to be an invitation for us to jump in together. Soness, who did you choose to be in coming on the Golden Mic today? Or how do you choose to show up on the Golden Mic today?
I chose to be present. And actually, I haven't written down my intention for today. And this is something that Marc and I do with every call that we work on, our coaching calls. And he's developing what's going to be a mega TEDx talk. I'm really, really super excited about it. I'm not going to give it away, but we start off first with gratitude. So let's all do this together. Let's type in one thing we're grateful for today. I would love to hear, what are you grateful for today? So for example, it could be anything like grand, like I'm grateful for water, or it can be something minor that happened. I'm really grateful for my darling who made me breakfast. I said, I have this Facebook Live at 9 a.m. And he's like, oh, I wish you told me earlier, but I'd gone to bed before he got home from work. And Japanese husbands aren't known for like doing householdy things. And my darling made me breakfast. He made me eggs. And it was fantastic. So I'm really grateful for a husband who's so supportive. So what are you grateful for today? What's one thing you're grateful for?
So I would say that so this door over here has been opening and closing. I don't know if the sound is coming through on the other side.
It's not.
My cousins have been coming in and out to take pictures of the show. And I absolutely love that I have family down from Georgia right now. That after the show, after you and I powwow for a little bit, that we get to go, we're going to be watching these hypnotism videos afterwards. So it's really, really fun to spend time with them.
Oh my goodness.
So those of you who are watching, I know Carrie, you just logged on. There's a couple of us in here right now. This is an invitation to join the circle right now. Let us know for what it is that you're grateful for today. Soness, thank you for starting it off that way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for continuing it. And there's having family around, especially when you have such a, I know because the Philippines is my third home. So culturally, Filipinos are really, really tight with their family. And, I've lived in America half my life, Japan for half my life, and then I surf in the Philippines every year. So that's my surfing destination. And
Bel Air, baby.
Bel Air. Bel Air is pretty good until you get to Siargao. And then you're just like, what? This is epic surf. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And sometimes like if you get there like at the peak season, the waves are about 4 to 6 stories high. I will not go on that one. Now I'm like, let me go for the little waves. So the next thing is intention. So I woke up today and I was like, what's my intention for today? And my intention was just to be present and connect. And I had no really big agenda for today with you. I know that your style is very, very, really in the moment. And so mine was to be present and connect. And I actually wrote that down, connect.
I think mine is the same. Every time I connect with you, Soness, I know that you have an agenda for me, and I just want to get to know you more. I love the fact that on this show, like, I get to connect with you. Get to connect with you more. I would say if there was a small little part B to that focus, it would be, it is an honor to hand you the mic and like see you run with it, because I really do look up to you when it comes to so much of the way that you present yourself and the way you present yourself from the inside out. And I think the folks who watch the Golden Mic consistently, like our boy Jorge, are consistently like that as well. So I love having you on. So yeah. So,
thank you. Well, let's bring this back to everyone watching right now. So if you're watching right now, what is your intention for today's live? What would you like to get from today's live? Specifically, it's kind of funny. I didn't imagine going in the direction of, we're going to talk philosophically about mental illness, how we should show up in the world. I didn't think we'd get into this philosophical momentum at the same time because, you know, you brought me on because I'm a TED speaker and a 3-time TEDx speaker as well, and a speaker coach. So, you know, making sure that we eventually get that direction. But again, we're being present and we're choosing to connect. And that's a really cool thing. So what's your intention for today's live? What would you like to get from today? And so maybe it's a word, maybe it's a phrase. And at any time, if you have any questions, please, please, please feel free to add those in.
Yeah. So let's throw out a couple things that are going on right now. Carrie, it's good to see you. Thankful for your family. Faber, that's a good question.
How are you seeing these comments?
Are you seeing them come up? Are you not seeing them come up on your screen?
No.
Oh no!
I see some of them pop up occasionally, but I think there's actually more in a sidebar.
Yeah, there is.
Donna Ray.
I'm going to them. Donna Ray.
My health and
my
family.
Fiona. I'm grateful for my voice.
Oh, and Fiona, you have a voice.
Yeah.
You have a voice, and that voice should be heard. I feel like so many times we, especially as women and you know, especially as immigrants, I'm an immigrant as well, you know, I've immigrated to Japan, and I'm not a resident. I'm a resident, I'm a permanent resident, but I'm not a citizen. But, you know, as immigrants as well, or as women especially, you know, playing small with our voices as opposed to letting our voices be heard on a larger platform. And that's kind of challenging. We have an expression in Japanese: the nail that stands up gets hammered down.
Oh.
And you have anything like that in the Philippines?
No, it's the nail that stands up gets hammered down. And then just to kind of contrast that with an American slogan or a Western slogan, the early bird catches the worm. So like the person that goes and beats their competition, which is almost the contrast of the nail that stands up. It's like, it's really interesting seeing the two things and how they complement or contrast each other.
It is really interesting, that interesting balance. Australia has one, the tall poppy syndrome. So if you're tall poppy, you'll get chopped down.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so don't rise and shine. And I believe right now is the time, especially for us to bring our voices to a bigger stage, to get our ideas out there, because that's how we create. I'm going to quote Marc on this, and this is really, really something profound that he said in one of our sessions. Can I share this? You're like, I don't know, what is it? But Marc says, and I love this, he says, we're not creatures of singularity. Dang, that's so true. We are not creatures of singularity. And what if we weren't brought into this world by ourselves? We were brought in here in this world to connect. One of my other speakers, Dr. Nona, she says, I love her. I mean, I may not be genius, but I love to hear the genius and bring out the genius in my speakers, and they're pretty amazing. And she says, you know, we weren't brought into this world by ourselves. We may think we came into this world alone, but there was always a mother or a doctor or a midwife there. So we were not combining that. We were not born of creatures of singularity. We were born to connect. We're born to be with each other. And when we raise our voices together, when we bring our ideas out to a bigger stage, when we have that internal power, that is the moment that we can start to heal the world and make a transformation. Because we're no longer thinking about ourselves. We're thinking on a world level, on a global level.
So
taking
awesome.
it away from the I and taking into the we.
So I want to ask you about that in a second, in terms of taking it from the I to the we.
Yes.
I'm feeling as, you know, like Fiona shared, being grateful for your voice. And I feel like the start is being grateful for your voice, and then pushing yourself almost is, well, what is my capacity to put my voice out there? Are you laughing at me, Stevens?
No, I love it. I love where you're going with this. I'm like, yeah, keep on going. And I don't want to like overlap over you, but you're just, keep on doing it. Keep on going.
Well, I wanted to throw out those who accepted the invitation to come out here. Faber, I want to show up as my authentic self. I'm grateful for love. Fiona, my intention of the day was to smile and be open to new ideas. I'm hoping all of you are going to get some stuff from Soness in this conversation, as well as you contributing to further this conversation. Elizabeth Palmer, good to see you. grateful for my and grateful for my innate and unending curiosity. She spent a lot of the day reading. So I'm grateful for a mind that seeks and absorbs. Palmer just dropped it. So we're seeking, we're absorbing, we're grateful for our voice, authentic self. We're grateful for our health and our family. And then there's this idea of putting our ideas out there, Soness. And so for those of us who have ever had that kind of calling, what does it look like to go from, I think I've got this idea. No one's going to want to listen to me. I don't know. And then there's almost like a large process to go from one to the other. And so what does that look like? Yeah.
What is that? Well, and that's something that it's interesting because watching you go through this process as well.
Brutal.
Brutal. It's so much fun.
It is.
It's a lot of fun. And when you think about where you were initially and where you're heading to now in this creation process, what have you discovered about yourself in that journey? Where did you start and where are you heading towards? What has shifted for you in that process?
Let
me turn it back to you.
Let's play ping pong all day, Stevens.
Oh, I could do that. I could do this all day.
Well, I think number one is that I'm a decent person at asking questions, but then when the question is directed at me, I'll continue to try to deflect that question. And I can do that with people up to an hour at a time on my golden mics. But one of the things is when I'm asked a pointed question, it really is for me a reflection of what I stand for. And I think through this process, I'm getting to the core of my values and unapologetically being able to come back and say, this is what I stand for. I do these golden mics for my son and for the family that's sitting out there, but I also sacrifice some of my time. That it may, that may seem like it's going against one another, but it's not. It's going in complete synchronicity when I'm in balance. And
when you're in balance.
Sometimes I can be out of balance when it comes to overthinking something. Or then you'll push me into a place where I'm feeling something and I'm not thinking anymore. And then it's coming from this core place where I'm angry at you. But then we bring it back together and there's this like integrated Marc that I've never been able to see in maybe a full way before. Now I'm gonna pong it back to you, Stevens.
Okay, well, that's really interesting to come back to that because I was a consultant with Disney for about 15 years. And one of the things we always think of is we think of this blue sky approach that, oh my gosh, every idea is brilliant. And those ideas are brilliant, but it's not usually the first idea that's brilliant. It's the 61st or the 101st or the 201st. We need to keep going with that. And some people settle on the first idea that they come up with, like, that's it. And watching, and this is really, really fascinating. I get really, really excited about this, but watching these speakers come through and like, this is it. And I kind of look at it. I'll give an example. One of my speakers, he's got a TEDx this Friday. I love him. He's amazing. His name's Karan and he's just brilliant man. And he first sent me his draft. And this is before we even worked together. I'm like, wow, he sent me the full thing. Like, this is pretty a lot of stuff for me to look through. And when we met up, I said, it's wanting to make someone feel good, but it's not getting there. It's just, it's not it. And I thought for sure, this guy is never going to want to talk to me again. And I say it in a very kind and loving way. At the same time, I'll be very direct and say, this is not where it needs to be. And I wouldn't put him on my TEDx stage. So it's like, whoa, you're the first person who was honest enough to say that. Everyone else was trying to sell him into something else, or I don't know. I don't know what was happening, but I was not the only coach he talked to. And then we started working together and we started exploring. We would start working. We do things a little backwards around here. And Marc's like, yes, you do, Soness. So we started back with not just the idea.
You might be breaking up on my end, Soness. Okay.
Oh, okay. I'll still be here. So let me repeat that one more time.
Yeah.
So I do things a little backwards around here. So instead of starting with the idea per se, and you can share your idea, I'm totally open to that. I want to hear it. Of course, I want to hear that. But we also need to look at what's the value system behind it. And when you starting with the values, as opposed to just starting with, here's this idea I want to push out into the world, we can actually create more momentum with it. Just an idea, you might as well give people a book. Mm-hmm. Here's a pamphlet on the back table. You can read all about it. I feel like I'm like walking into a doctor's office and receiving a pamphlet. But in this case, when we start with our values, and I'll go back to the little heart mark that you made earlier. When we go back to our values, that's when we start to really click an idea, spark it, and we have a conviction. And this conviction is what makes an idea worth spreading. An idea worth spreading is not just, here's something I think. An idea worth spreading is something that you have conviction for, that is going to connect on a universal level, not just on what I think, but what's true for me, true for you, and true for everyone around us. And that's when we start making a movement. That's when we start making change. And I know for Karan, it was really funny. He was like, I was asking all these random questions. He's like, what are you, my psychotherapist? Tell me about your grandmother. He's like, what are you doing? But it turns out that was actually the heart of all of his values. He values equality. Everyone should be treated the same. Now, he's a wonderful man, and he teaches people how to, he teaches kids in India how to study abroad, how to get, basically they're pretty affluent kids, how to get into Harvard, like he studied at Harvard. And he ended up having to return when his family ran out of money, even though he was working 4 jobs simultaneously. And he thought that was where his talk was. And we kept digging and digging and digging and finding his value set. And it turns out he's got the most amazing message and amazing movement. What he never talks about is that he goes into the slums of India, because he sees these kids that he's sponsored, not continuing and finishing their elementary school education. They go to school not to learn, but to get a free lunch. And they never even finish elementary school. And he started seeing that these kids are getting raped. Every hour, 4 children are raped in India. Every hour. And it's just incredible to see this change. And he goes into the schools now in the slums, and he's not just teaching them what he teaches the other kids, which he does. He teaches them life skills, time management. He draws possible career opportunities for them and really sees that education is a way of hope. And then he started realizing that these kids walking kilometers through the slums are the target for sexual abuse and rape. So he created a sexual awareness program, teaching kids what's appropriate or inappropriate, and teaching them how to defend themselves. And it's absolutely, how come that was not the first idea? It wasn't. So sometimes we have to go through the process of understanding our values in order to get there. And this Friday, he's giving his TEDx talk on how do we stop child rape in India education. So what a huge transition to move from, I want to give a talk on how to give people hope and strength and power to believe in their dreams. To how do we give kids hope, strength, and power so that they can retain their innocence and stop the cycle of abuse, stop the cycle of rape.
So I think one of the things, by the way, go and crush it on Friday, brother. Good luck, Karan.
We love you, Karan.
You don't need luck, Karan. Congratulations.
He works so hard. I'm so proud of him. He's working really, really hard.
Okay. Yeah. Now that makes me feel like I need to play some catch up with you. But no, I did my homework this week. But I did want to throw this out there. One is an observation, and second is a question. The first observation that I've seen is not only an observation with myself, but I'm very, very close with the folks that I work in my mastermind program with, and I'm also very, very kind of strong-fisted about who I want to come in and talk to the group. And one of the things that I observed was that very quickly, Soness, we're a group of folks who are passionate about what we do, but in seeing sort of that value system first, it made what we do as coaches more credible, and it made where it is that we're going with what we want to do more credible. Everything is our stage. I think you've talked about folks that when you practice, you can practice in an Uber if you got that value system down. When you're interacting with somebody and saying thank you for your Starbucks or your tea, you can have that same kind of interaction with the same amount of conviction, and you don't need the TEDx or the TED to have that kind of conviction. So here's the question that I have for you.
All right, bring it on.
Is conviction, Marc or are things like conviction and value systems malleable, or like once we get to the core of that, is that like the core of who we are, and then we basically have that premise for the rest of our life?
Don't you think our values, I kind of wonder about this too. And I've noticed for me, my values have changed and shifted over time. And you're a positive psychologist, so you probably see this too. The more that we experience in life, and all of us have different experiences and backgrounds. We all have, even if you grew up on the same block as your best friend, just being in a different household and just being, you know, child number 1 versus child number 7. That's me. I'm number 7. Yeah. So just by being a different number in the household, that changes your view of the world. So wouldn't your values shift and change? And the more that you experience life, the more that you build up your resilience, or the more that you build up your decision-making and choices of who you are on a daily basis, that changes. So for all of my TED and TEDx talks, I've always gone back to the core value system. And even if it's a talk that doesn't quite, you know, even if it's a talk that you feel is a little light and fluffy for you, or you don't feel this amazing amount of conviction. So for example, when I spoke at TED, I was one of the 20 representatives for Japan. All these movers and shakers, these people are doing amazing stuff, like creating robots that fly, and you just like, and I'm up there, and the idea that I had actually pitched and given, they said, oh, that's what's in your lunchbox? I'm like, oh yeah, I make 3 meals a day in my rice cooker because I have this health condition and I can't cook. So anyway, I'd like to tell you about this idea I have about communications, because I'm a communications researcher. This is what I publish academic journal articles on, and this is what I've been studying for the past 18, 20 years. And I have a communications TV show and radio show. Of course, I'm going to talk about communications. They're like, tell us more about your lunchbox. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? So of course they say, we want you to speak on the TED stage about how you cook 3 healthy meals a day in a rice cooker. And I thought, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I don't want to talk about my rice cooker. I want to talk about communications, all of my research. But when opportunity comes, you have to say, yes, please, and
thank you.
That's right. So I took the opportunity. And at this moment, as opposed to giving the talk that I wanted to give, I'm focusing on this. I'm like, I have no connection with this. Like, it's just something I do. But sometimes when we have different varieties of TED Talks, and I've created what I consider the 5 types of TED Talks. The quintessential talk, which is your body of work, everything that you believe in, everything you've researched. And that's one of the talks I've given. The life story, the solution talk, the creative talk, and then the not the be all end all. This is your light and fluffy talk. It's kind of like, do you know Joe Smith? Thank you. Name come back to me. Thank you. You're like, yeah, you're welcome, Soness, anytime. So Joe Smith, he gave a TED talk on how to use a paper towel. And you think, somebody gave a TED talk on that? I know how to use a paper towel. You have to see that talk. It's so good. 4 minutes, but you'll never dry your hands the same. Every time I do, I still use that same. Anyway, I'm not going to give it away for you, but just know that your hand drying will change. So for me, the rice cooker talk was that as well. And going back into it, what are my values? And I went back through my value system, and I shared with your group how to go through this too. And when I got down to it, and you can hear this in the last line of my rice cooker talk, it all boils down to my belief system, my value, which is, at the end, I say this, when we remove labels, we can be, do, and act in any way we choose. In life, go against the grain. It's minor. It's 2 sentences, but it's my core value system. And you can still infuse it in there. Yeah. And I'm sure most of the people listening to it never really caught on to that. But for me, I've been labeled my whole life. I was homeless. I was living in a car, in and out of schools, mostly not in school until I was 13. And I finally went to school regularly. And I would always be the homeless kid, the poor kid, the kid living in the car, the kid who wasn't going to school. I would never go to university. I moved to a homogenous society in Japan where everybody's the same. And I stick out like a sore thumb. I am very, very different here. Celebrated in a way, and in some ways I'm accepted, but not necessarily included. So how do you hold that balance? There's always the label of foreigner. And when we think about, see, my fan is like right in my face. I might turn that off. So if I start sweating more profusely, you'll know why. And in this moment, I want to be able to share with the world that we don't have to have those labels. It's not about your race. It's not about your gender. It's not about where you're from. It's not about how you grew up or what's different about you. You are different. All of us are unique.
Yeah.
And you can embrace your difference, removing those labels, and be, do, and act in any way that you choose. So all of these boil down. And of course, when you go to my quintessential TEDx talk, you'll see it goes all the way down to my value system of listening. And then the next, every time goes through the value systems, and they shift and they change throughout time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why it's important to go through this process for each and every talk, or each and every piece of content, or each and every course creation, going through this process of what is my value system right now? Yeah. What is important to me to share with the world? On a world level, why does the world need to hear this message?
Absolutely.
On a personal level, how do you feel this conviction to share this message? And knowing that you have everything inside of you because you are a perfect human being. You were born into this world a perfect human being. Knowing that you had all the wisdom in the world. What does that inner wisdom say? And when you start with that, that's when you can start moving towards your value system and start creating something that's not a talk. Because my speakers don't give a talk because they want to give a talk. They give a talk. My speakers don't speak because they want to speak. They speak because they have to. There's no other choice because only you can share that message in the way that you can from your experiences, to share that with that one person in the world who needs to share that. That one person needs to hear that so that they can change their lives, and then they can go out and share it with someone else and sharing it with someone else, because you're touching one heart at a time, one and one and one and one exponentially, until that creates a world of transformation.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've loved you, I've loved you, but also in terms of the things that I've heard you say is, Cordone, it's not how many people you're speaking to, but who is listening. And I think that piece has really shifted the way that I communicate, not only from the standpoint of, the stuff that I'm doing to apply for a TEDx, but just the way that I communicate with clients, the way that I communicate on the Golden Mic. And I'm seeing the evolution happening between episode 1 and episode 56 now. I do want to throw this out there for those of you who are tuning in, like Paula, we see you. I see you. Fiona, it's awesome that you're loving that. Keep giving the feedback. Donere, it is fabulous. It's awesome to hear that kind of feedback. One of the great things is with the quintessential, the life story, the solution, the creative talk, the not be all end all, and also the fact that our value system can be always shifting a little bit. When we get to the core, there can be I think a fear that if I give a talk, I'm going to be pigeonholed, and that's what I'm going to be known as. But then when you see that you can break it down into these quintessential solution, not the be all end all, and also that your value system will always be changing. We're not homeostatic beings. We're not beings that live in homeostasis. And given that, there's millions of ways to communicate ideas out there. And I love that. I love that idea. Now, I wanted to ask this of you.
Okay.
You've coached hundreds. It might be in the thousands now of people.
10,000.
Do you have
markers that way.
Your wall in front of you?
I do not know. As far as TED and TEDx speakers, it's about 120. Okay. So it's kind of cool because I have a unique distinction, because I not only am I a TED and 3-time TEDx speaker, but also a head speaker coach for multiple TEDx events, and I'm trainer to over 120 TED and TEDx speakers around the world as individuals. And I think that's kind of a unique perspective. But I'm also an academic and a professor. So I still go into the university once a week. I love it. It's on Tuesday afternoons. I walk in, I'm like, y'all are my guinea pigs. They're like, we love this. I had one student who said, I'm going to petition to the university about your class. I'm like, oh, usually when students petition to the university about a class, that's not a good thing. And he says, I think your class should be longer than a semester. I think it should be a year-long course. Yeah. I was like, what? I said, y'all are my guinea pigs. Thank you. You're featuring my research. So, I mean, if we think about all across the the speakers I've trained across Asia and Japan and students as well, like about 10,000, I guess, over. I've been doing this. I've been doing and practicing communications for over 20 years. So yes. I know I have this great filter on my camera. No, actually, I just have really good light. So I look like I'm in my 30s, which is absolutely fantastic. You know, that's why I always arrange for Facebook Lives to be at 9 in the morning. So I have a really good light.
well, I'm Asian, so I always look like I'm in my 30s. So, well, I wanted to throw this out there. So you've coached more people than my 10 fingers and my 10 toes. Who established that? Many, many, many people. I want to draw it back to you, Soness. What was there a time that you were the reluctant speaker? And what did that part look like for you? Why was it that you needed to share your message, and what was that message?
Oh my God. Well, I think I've always been the reluctant speaker.
Yeah.
I think as a kid I wasn't. As a child, I think, you know, as most kids are, we come into the world with that sense of knowing who we are, and somehow somewhere along the line it's either beaten out of us or yelled out of us, whatever. I'm not saying everybody's like a victim of violence, but I mean, in the sense of we have forgotten how we were brought into this world with an essence of greatness. And I know that I forgot that at some point. And if you had told me, this is another reason why I am definitely not a proponent of the passion principle, is if you had told me that I'd be doing what I'm doing right now, I would have said you're crazy, because I couldn't even raise my hand in class when I finally went to school. When I was 13, I finally entered the education system because my grandmother took us in. And I had a hard time raising my hand in class. I had a hard time reading through, you know, when they do an English class, they're like, okay, all right, we're all going to read a paragraph. And I'm like counting down, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm the 11th student. So that's the 11th paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would
the only one who did that.
I'm a crazy person. Oh, I'm going to be like number 11 and be like already practicing that paragraph. Like, okay, blah, blah, blah. And then the teacher would be like, oh, this student's not ready. So we're going to move on to the next. I'm like, no, I'm number 10. I've been practicing the wrong paragraph. I would have such a hard time getting my voice to come out in class. And I couldn't raise my hand. I was just having such challenges with that. And, you know, then moving into the stage and always experiencing something new and allowing those experiences. So we tell kids all the time, follow your passion. Dude, I didn't know what my passion was. Yeah. I just had a lot of really interesting experiences. And I said, yes, please, and thank you to them. So that ended up growing a different set of skills and talents I would have never, ever developed. You told me I would have a nationwide broadcast TV show in communications, and be like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
If you told me about a radio show, no, there's no way. If you told me I'd be on tour, nationwide tour, audiences of 1,000 plus, a couple times every weekend, I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
But we keep allowing ourselves to experience different things and grow into that space. Now, here's the difference. Often, and I think you and I have talked about this too, when we're working with someone else's materials, it's really great because when it develops our confidence, but we also get stuck in their stuff.
Yes.
It's their ideas, their concepts. And when it comes to giving our own talks and our own voice, for me, giving the rice cooker talk was like piece of cake. I'm like, yeah, I look at that and think, you know, if the world judges me for that, then whatever. I know the backstory of it. But when it comes to sharing our own messages, for example, the difference of my talk on listening, all of my talks are mostly about communications and going up on the world's largest stage, stepping on the red dot to say, my mom suffers from mental illness, and how can we create a better listening and communicative society? And where does that all begin? I thought my mom is going to be like, you tell the world I'm crazy. And she probably would have been very upset about that if she had the internet. No, I was very straight up. I was very honest with her about that. And going into that process of, I'm going to be sharing such a vulnerable part, a story that I don't go around publicly advertising. And it's something that I felt like the world would judge me for. And it was very, very challenging. I remember leading up to that talk, feeling some anxiety come up. And anybody tells me, and this is me, I've been on stage for like 15 years nationwide, the audience is 1,000 plus, me going, oh my God, I am crazy nervous about this.
Yeah.
Anybody who says they don't get nervous sharing their own message is either a liar or a narcissist. Truth be told, it's going to come up for you. And I remember going and thinking, oh my God, I'm giving this talk in a week. Where's my cat? I can't find my cat. She's been missing for like an hour. I can't give a talk. Ow, why'd you come back? And, I was in the shower washing my hair, and I remember feeling like, is more hair coming out than normal? Am I losing I can't. What if somebody put hair removal cream in my shampoo? Oh my gosh, I cannot give a TEDx talk if I'm bald. I better call him up and cancel. And I thought, Soness, this is ridiculous. Who is going to walk into your house, put hair removal cream into your shampoo so that your hair would fall out the week before your talk? Nobody. These are crazy pants ideas. Vanessa, are you aware of that? Yes, I am aware of that. Okay. What does that mean? It means that I am afraid of giving this talk. Why are you afraid of giving this talk? How come? Well, because if I give this talk, people will judge me. Okay. And then, well, if they judge me, it means they don't like me. And then, Soness, what's up with that? And so, like, I have these crazy voices in my head. And I'm still having this conversation in my head going, well, if they don't like my talk, it means they don't like me. And then if they don't like me, it means I'm unlovable. That is my biggest fear in the whole entire world. And I don't know what your biggest fear is, but that's my biggest fear, is being unlovable. And at that moment, that's when we can have that. It's not having the fear, it's being aware of that fear and deciding, what do you choose to do instead with that? And so I had to make a conscious decision at that moment. How do you move beyond this? What do you choose to do with this? Well, I choose to be present and connect with my audience.
Yeah.
I choose to share this story, not for me, but because there's one person out there.
Yeah.
I choose to be ready for this. I'm going to be so ready that I don't have to think about this talk. And the best of the best TED and TEDx speakers, they rehearse over 200 times, and I make you work hard. I know you're like, Soness, why are you making me work so hard? But I do that same process myself so that I can have that time and attention to focus on that person who needs that message. I don't have to think about the ideas, the words, nothing. That is embodied. All I want to do is focus on you.
Yeah. And
in that moment, that's when it can connect. So that's part of the process. We're all going to feel that. We're all going to.
Sorry, Soness.
We're all going to go there.
I just wanted to throw out. Yeah, I just wanted to throw out Chrissy, Mr. Soness, no label, yes to values. Donna Ray, great question. I told you, Donna Ray, I ask good questions, but I don't want to talk about myself until she pushes me to talk about myself in our one-on-ones. Fiona McNair, I still do that. I think, Fiona, you were talking about when we read to those paragraphs. For me, I remember the day very, very vividly. We were reading Streetcar Named Desire, and Miss Aubrey skipped a couple of people, and I was the guy that had to read Stella, and I wasn't rehearsed for that. Like, absolutely threw me off my game. Paula, it's good to see you, Paula. Growing confidence, the best harvest. Are you feeling that, Soness? Growing confidence.
Feeling it. Growing Fiona, confidence. I love that.
Going back to Fiona, embrace the fear, then let it go, makes her stronger as well. I wanted to ask you this, Soness. We're talking about a story in which you come into class and you could not, it probably felt like your arm was being tied down. Like, even if you had a great idea, like you couldn't raise your hand, to being a few days away from stepping on the red dot. Now, lots of people can be thinking right now, oh, step into the fear. Oh, that's so great. It's easy for you to say because you got it done. We can Google you right now and find your TEDx's and stuff like that. But in retrospect, go back to the Soness that was thinking about her hair falling out, right?
If you could give me just a moment, for some reason my
Okay.
computer is not charging. Excuse me.
Oh, okay. So for those of you who are tuning in, we are talking to Soness Stevens, three-time
the
TEDx speaker.
The power got disconnected. One more time, please.
Three-time TEDx speaker. We got Soness Stevens today and coach, and we're talking about before she took her first stage.
No, that's my second. I had a TED and then a TEDx.
So every time you go through that again.
Every time. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Even like this is my TED and then third TEDx talk after that. So it's the fourth time on the red dot talking about miscarriage. I gave a talk on miscarriage. What do you say? It's about having a different conversation about loss. And it's not about speaking up about miscarriage. It's about something very different. And going onto the stage, again, same thing came up. Because you're speaking with conviction. You're speaking with that really deep message from the heart.
Yeah.
It's not just information. It's not just, I have this idea, or it's not this theoretical thing. This is something that you live, breathe, and practice. And it can be judged, and it can kind of put you on the edge, and you almost feel like you're teetering. And at that moment, you have to make that decision. How do you choose to move forward with it? Even Karan's like, why am I doing this? Why do I keep pushing myself to do stuff like this? Like, he just said this to me yesterday, which is why I'm kind of bringing this up. He's like, why did I sign up to do this kind of coaching? This is really intense. And I can't believe I have to give this on Friday. And he's like, I just want to give up. And I was like, you should do that. You should just give up. And he's like, oh. I was like, all right, if you want to give up, it's okay. You can give up. And he's like, I'm not giving up on this. This is everything I stand for. And that's right. It's everything you stand for.
It's the values.
It's the values.
It's the values.
It's everything in there.
So let's go there with the values. You're a week out from your first talk. Let's talk about the first one now, because you've done multiple.
And which one? The rice cooker, or the one on listening, and the one about mental illness?
The one on listening, mental illness. You knew something was coming up, right?
Yeah, for that, yes.
Mental illness, right?
No, my first one was on the rice cooker.
On the rice cooker. Okay. So choose your own adventure here. Because
choose your own adventure.
Fundamental experience, Soness, and now you're talking about Karan having the same experience. I'm having the same experience when I'm with you one-on-one. I feel like I'm being pushed to the breaking point, and that I want to quit, and I don't want to quit. But in retrospect, what do you think you would have missed out on if you didn't take that stage? Because there was a lot of things that you said you were worried about that you could use justifiably to not get on that stage.
Oh, there's another
thing. Especially with the miscarriage one and all these other things going on, you didn't have to take the stage. But what have you lost out on?
Well, it's really interesting. There's actually two things that came up between. I'll compare the listening versus the miscarriage talk, and we can find the difference and the similarities between those. And for what, God, I want to say on a world level that the people who were present for listening, they came up and said they changed. And even later, I would get emails like a year later from people saying, it changed the way that I communicate in my relationship with my partner. It changed my relationship with my mother. It changed how I show up with my colleagues at work. And it like they were having some work issues. And I don't want to get into their specific stories because that's their story. And so even though, and I do believe you still have to work it, because I know right after I gave the TEDx talk on listening, I had suffered another miscarriage. And right when it came out, the event doesn't promote it. I didn't do any promotion for it because I was in my own state of grieving. It doesn't have heaps of views, and that's okay. Again, it's not how many people are watching, it's who's listening. And the people who really connected with it said it changed how they communicate with others. On a personal level, for me to go out on the biggest stage in the world that has a massive amount of credibility and talk about my family in that way, I had to go back and keep an integrity with that. And I had to go back and have this conversation with my mom, like, hey, Mom, I kind of went on the biggest world stage, and talked about how we grew up, and I talked about how we had that relationship, or how you had suffered from mental illness, but I don't believe it's your fault. I believe somehow when you were a little girl, you may have felt unheard. And I think that was the point for you at which everything shifted and changed. So I don't believe it's your fault. And then she started to cry, and she came out with these stories about all the times in her life where she felt unheard. Because little girls in the 1930s were supposed to be seen and not heard. Mm. She was curious and very intelligent, but she was called crazy. So having these dialects, having this understanding, having this connection, and saying there are many different forms of mental illness, not saying that you're a crazy cuckoo. Maybe she is. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, not saying that she's crazy cuckoo in that sort of sense, but they're varying forms. And it's time for the world to have a bit more understanding and compassion for that. So it actually shifted the whole dynamic of our relationship. And so I don't care if no one ever watched that talk.
Yeah.
Just to have spent a year developing something with such profound relationship changing skills and ideas that shifted the relationship dynamic in our whole family, it was worth it.
Yep.
When I think of, speaking of miscarriage, what do you say? And that level, it's really complicated, because when you're giving a talk on something that's mentally or emotionally and possibly physically triggering, and it can cause PTSD in some people, or you can cause some sort of traumatic reaction from the audience. It's a very delicate process. And that is something that a lot of people are not aware of. And you also have to be aware of yourself. I have to be aware of myself. Is this something that I can do? Is this something that I can create without having to get up on stage and do stage therapy? And I call it stage therapy. But stage therapy is when you go up on a stage and the audience is like, I have to take care of you because you're about to lose it on stage. You know, you have to. It's like, you're like, and I lost my babies. I never thought I would step on the red dot and say that. You know, are you physically, mentally, emotionally capable of doing that while being able to evoke the emotion? Because the amazing thing about storytelling is that when we can connect on a deeper level, it creates a neurosynchronicity of the brain. It's like Wi-Fi. It's like wah, 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 wah. And it's not like it's just my story anymore. It's our story. You are experiencing it just the same as I did. If you're in that state where you can evoke that emotion without having to go down the rabbit hole in the well of, you know, darkness and despair, it's a very delicate balance of being able to go in there and then snap out of it.
Yep.
And that's challenging. And when I thought about doing this talk, I thought, well, you know, other people have written blog posts on miscarriage. Who am I to be talking about it? I'm not a doctor. I'm just a woman who's experienced this. But I do have something different. And I think we need to, when we're thinking about giving a possibly triggering talk, we need to think about, how do we first challenge popular thought? Everyone's talking about being silent about miscarriage. I practiced that. I literally practiced that for a year. My most recent miscarriage, for a year, I went out, and instead of being, you know, I'd heard some really well-meaning but not so helpful platitudes that people said to me in my previous miscarriages that really hurt. They caused more shame. I thought, well, what happens if we do go out? And every time somebody says, do you have kids? I'd say, oh, actually, we just lost the baby again. And I would like, okay, so does speaking up and not being silent about miscarriage, what happens then? And I found people would come up with the same 5 types of different responses that were all well-meaning, but not helpful at all. They most likely cause shame. And so I thought, that's when you have to challenge a popular thought. And so you get really curious about it. And that's step 2. And so my curiosity led to doing research. And so I listened to the stories of over 600 women who also suffered from miscarriage or infant loss. And, oh God, their stories are so beautiful, so powerful. And out of 600 women, only one felt completely supported by her friends and family. 599 women said that they experienced shame, that they felt, they were told, and some women were literally told, what did you do? You must have done something wrong. You know, what's wrong with you? Somebody asked me, whose fault was it, yours or your husband's? You know, like, you know, oh, it's because you're so active, Soness. You know, it's like, what the?
How
like,
did this go wrong?
Yeah, there's a lot of shaming attitudes. Or you know, if you were meant to be a mother, you'd have a baby.
Yeah.
Kind of things. Like, who says this kind of crappy thing? Nobody says that until you realize, no, I have recordings of people saying this. You know, that was part of the research part. So we need to always be curious about that. How do we challenge that popular thought? What's true or untrue? And then we have to continually be speaking about it. And then we prove it. And that's where the research element comes in. And then you just got to know yourself. Are you capable of doing this? And I thought, I can't speak about how to grieve or how to recover because I haven't figured that out, but I'm a communications practitioner. I have figured out better ways that we can communicate about loss, whether we push our pain on someone without being prepared, or do we choose to have those conversations with the people who are ready to be with us in those conversations? And how do we determine that? And how do we teach others what's the response that we need in order to feel embraced and held versus shamed?
I love that you're bringing that up because oftentimes folks will think the best TEDx is the ones that provide a solution for somebody else. It will give someone an answer. But in many ways, you're talking about a TEDx that helps people clarify questions. They can ask better questions. I also love the fact that anyone right now that's listening or watching the replay can be right on that precipice in saying, yes, I have this opportunity here that I can walk through. I have an opportunity to go after take my big idea to a big stage. A lot going on. Now's the time for me to calm down. I've got family in the other room. I can't work this hard right now. But you know that you might miss out on something by not walking through that door. The please and thank you right now. And those may never come back. Our love lines are open, Soness, and we had 2 people on the love line. Like, it's 9 p.m. here, so I'm like, the love lines are open. What dedications do you want to make? And so I've got one person that stuck around. I know the other person. If you're still there, brother, let us know. Come on back. You met her on Tuesday, Allison Prophet. Allison, what's going on with you? How are you?
Hi, good. Hi, Soness and Marc. How's it going?
Hey, happy to see you.
Yeah, same here. I haven't been able to be on the whole thing, but I feel like when I tuned in and hopped on here live, I was really touched by some of the things that you were sharing about first your own personal stories. And then also about, it doesn't matter how many people watch, but it's like who is in that audience listening. And I just think that that's really, really true and really powerful reminder in the speaking world. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you, Allison.
I know you two met on Tuesday. Allison, is there anything that you wanted to throw out there? Because I know with your you just got certified as a coach on Tuesday, Allison. How was interacting with Soness? How did you get from that?
Yeah, what sort of awakened in you, or
I think
for you.
I think for me, what was really cool was really just the process of writing a talk is a long process. And my takeaway was really from what you shared, it's like, wow, like that could actually be really cathartic and healing in a way. And I know I shared in our session, my background's in human resources, and there's so many personal situations that in my life as an HR leader, I've had the opportunity to really touch those people's lives and be there and support them and try to create this kind of safer space at work. And that's kind of my big idea. I know I shared that on Tuesday with you. And so my question, if I can ask a question.
Oh, of course. Please do, Allison. I love your questions, by the way. You have great questions.
I'm an HR practitioner. We ask a lot of great questions. So my question is, my background is in HR. I feel very deeply connected to HR people. but I don't want to leave. I think my message that I want to get out there to the world goes beyond HR people. It goes to leaders. It goes to the people that are working in organizations. And so what advice or feedback or insights might you have in terms of when you're crafting that message? Should I be speaking directly to one type of person, like my ideal client, so to speak, or should it be more of a generic message and one that anybody can kind of take out there and replicate in their role within an organization?
That's interesting. And here's the thing, Allison. Let me just check in to see what your question is one more time. So you're asking, as an HR person, should you be very specific about speaking to the leaders of the organizations, or should you keep it general so that everyone can follow up on board with that and that it's replicable? Is that correct?
Yes.
Sweet. Okay. And that's a great question, because the head of TED, Chris Anderson, he says everyone has an idea worth spreading. And I believe it's a matter of discovering it, which Allison knows is quite a process there. We really do have to sit down and discover it. Most people never go into those depths, as well as making it clear, concise, and replicable. And replicable means that everyone can take action upon it. Everyone can do something with that. And when we're in that stage of who do I speak to, it's surprising, because sometimes and I used to teach this. I used to teach, always speak to the right audience. It's kind of like marketing, market yourself to the right person, your ideal customer avatar, and how that should be. And I actually learned that that's not the case. Surprisingly, based on my most recent TEDx talk on miscarriage, speaking to an audience that I thought was absolutely wrong, speaking to an all male audience in Japan, they were all over 50, not necessarily known for their emotional quotient, EQ. There was only 5 women in the audience. 2 of them were high school girls. I thought, oh, crud, I'm in the wrong place giving the wrong message. Ironically, the 3 women had nothing to say to me, except, there are clinics for that, right? The 2 high school girls, one of them came up in tears, recalling how her mother had also had a miscarriage after she was 5 years old. And she went home and she had a conversation with her. And she texted me the next day and she said, I had the best conversation in my life, and it changed the relationship between me and my mom. Oh, first of all, she's a high school girl. She's doing this in English, in her second language, and letting me know this. And my talk was in English. Of course, there was Japanese subtitles on the side. And I was so blown away by that. But also the men in the audience at the after party for 2 hours, Yuji and I had lines of men who shared their stories of loss and grief, not being able to have children. This one man cried for 15 minutes before he could get a word out, that they never had their chance to experience that loss, that grief, not just experience it, but to express it. Let's say expression, because that's important too. So I'm actually going to move away from, you have to be in front of the right audience only. So Allison, for you in this case, yes, go out and speak in front of HR audiences, leadership conferences. One of my speakers, she's a relocation expert in real estate, and she speaks at HR conferences. How do we help people relocate in a better way? Does that connect to a TEDx talk? Yes, it can as well. So when we think about that idea, yes, go speak to the leaders. The leaders, HR is really, it seems to be the soft skills that most companies don't pay attention to, but it's very, very valuable. In fact, it's probably one of the most valuable areas of the company. What is a company? A company is, one of my speakers, I'll quote Shirley on this. She says, a company is a collaboration of unique individuals. That's what she says, a corporation is a collaboration of unique individuals, and we have to honor them. And she's not speaking on HR, by the way. But that's something that's really underrepresented in the leadership of organizations. They don't appreciate how important HR is in making sure that everyone gets staffed correctly, that everyone has their needs met, that everyone feels satisfied, not just job satisfaction, but job love. And maybe you may not have passion for your job every day, but you can walk in with a choice every day of, how am I going to be in this job on a daily basis? How can I use my skills for the betterment of this organization while creating what I like to create? Seth Godin as well says, a lot of artists go into graphic design because they want to be an artist, but they forget to create their own art because they're so busy creating other people's logos. my summary of that. It's not per quote out of his book, but it's very, very similar. And how do you encourage that? So HR is so, so important, Allison. So definitely speaking to leaders, making sure that's out there. And also, how can you relate that on a bigger level as well? Because the people in a TED audience, they are leaders.
Yeah.
They are the movers and shakers of the world. And we call the audience participants because their job is to share your ideas further, implement them. So I believe there's a balance. And I probably shouldn't say this is the TED speaker coach lady who's teaching everybody to get booked to speak at TED and TEDx. But when we have an idea, you need to always be speaking. Develop your abs, always be speaking. So the more that you're out there speaking, the more that you can refine your ideas, the more that you can connect those with other people and see what's hitting and what's not hitting, see what's landing home and start that creation process. And there are a million stages. So even in my program, Step on the Red Dot, it's basically how to grow from your seed of an idea through your submitting the best application for different TEDx events and through developing your core thesis and all the way through your 2.5-minute TED audition. And how do you develop that? When we look at the events, we look at them like they're universities. We look at them like, where's your dream event? Where's the other event that you want to speak at? The one that's local that you can do. Where's the event that I'd go there? And then we'd also look at a not TED, but got cred kind of event. What's another event that's got credibility, but not TED, so that you can continue developing and working and honing these ideas. So Allison, for you, I would say, we need to start developing that seed of an idea. I do believe HR is extremely important. As everyone's big on leadership, but who do you lead? And I think Derek Sivers said the leader is not, it's not who you think it is. You think it's that person who's leading the charge, but the leader is actually the second person who follows that movement, or the third or the fourth. The second person is actually number 2, is the leader. And you need to be speaking to those people. Those are the people in the organization that you bring on board, Allison.
So good. So good.
So is that insightful? I hope she disappeared. So I don't know where.
It was so insightful that she got pulled into the ether. I wanted to throw this out there. Donna Ray connecting with Allison. Paula, I know you're a coach and you also do things as well with HR. Paula, it's great to see you contributing. Rebecca, I know that you've been writing the past couple days. Soness, you are amazing. I appreciate you on so many levels. Soness, it's a love show for you. We're going to play This Is Your Life a little bit more, if that's okay with you. We've got another person who, from your past, AKA Tuesday, was hiding in the shadows, and it sounds like he's got a voice now. Mike Faber, welcome to the show. So Faber, I know that you were here on Tuesday and you couldn't interact with us. How was that to be able to not to be able to communicate and just be kind of sitting there, man?
That was rough. Just because one, you're amazing, and you have so much information that I had so many questions to you, and I didn't have the opportunity. And then I was typing so fast, and I was something Private Republic, and there was all kinds of craziness, but I apologize, and I want you to know your story is amazing.
Thank you.
I was sitting here pretty much floored. I was one of the ones that left just because I was like, I don't want to follow this. Like this, it was so touching and real that I was just like, man, I am not worthy of the next second. Let me get out of here before I take it up, kind of thing. And then Marc told me if I wanted to stay in his program, I had to get back on here. So I got back on.
I told him to get back in it. He was in line, and I saw him jump off, and I was like, "What's going on, Faber?"
Your story was amazing, and so it touched me. It touched my heart, and I didn't want to follow that up with any kind of questions I had or anything. But like I said, you're absolutely phenomenal. Being able to get to know you Tuesday and today, and be able to listen to you, and now actually get to speak, it's amazing. You literally have changed my life in literally 2 conversations for you. But I want to ask a question, if that's okay.
Absolutely. I'm so, first of all, I'm so excited to hear your voice because you were muted. I was having a problem with the connection on Tuesday at the workshop, and like, oh, I wonder what Michael's thinking. Is he enjoying this? Is he sitting there and just like, no words? Yes, please. Thank you.
It's scary, but on computer, I'm on my phone. But my question was that you have done so many TED Talks, and you have coached so many that have done this. If I'm sitting here right now thinking, I really want to do this, but I don't think I can, or I don't know if I can, or how do I even get started? What's the best advice? What's the first thing you say to someone getting ready to try to embark on this journey to this destination that would motivate, or not that it factor that could keep going?
That it factor that keep on going. So let me just understand that question and reiterate it. So your question is, how do we, one, get started on this journey? How do we get the motivation to continue it? Especially, may I interpret this in there, especially if we don't think we really have all that much to talk about, or the expertise, right, or what is that?
Right. We all have that gremlin, like, why would someone want to listen to me?
Why would someone want to listen to me?
Why do I have to say my voice, kind of thing?
Yeah. Why would someone want to listen to you? It's a good question.
Yeah, I ask myself that daily.
Yeah. I mean, that's a question, and that's something that's really interesting. Can we just go there for a second, Michael? Is that okay? Why would somebody want to listen? Why would someone want to listen to me? We talked on Tuesday about the perfection that we are born with, that we only have two fears in life. And this comes from Dr. Nona, who I just adore. I love my speakers. So it gets, they're so wonderful. And she says we're born with only two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. But we are only afraid of that when it's actually happening. As babies, we don't sit around feeling, oh my God, I wonder if there's going to be a loud sound happening in the next 5 days. Or we don't feel like, oh my God, I wonder if I'm going to fall in the next week. That's not something that comes up for babies. It's only a reaction in that moment. And we forgot that. And how do we get back to that state of knowing that we are perfection without the fear of falling? Not failing, but falling, although we have that too as well. We need to really remember who we are and why. Not why. Let's go back and find, how does our message have something that's going to affect one other person? And we're thinking too much about ourselves in that moment. And when we're focused on ourselves, we cannot focus on another person. True? You've been on those kind of dates, right? The person's all about themselves, like, I. It's like, oh God.
I do that all the time.
Okay, well, there you go. So when we're focused on ourselves, we cannot focus on another person. And we need to be at the heart of listening for them and what they need and what their struggles are. If we come at it from a sense of compassion, then we can actually shift that. So you're not talking for the sake of talking for yourself. You're talking because they need you in that state. And we can go back to a compassion exercise that we practice. I practice Zazen meditation here at my local temple here in Japan. It's just, when you come visit, there's always extra futon. So you and your Marc's like, Marc knows that his whole family is going to be visiting at some point. So, Michael, you too. And one of the things that we practice is the act of compassion. And it goes very simply like this. Just like me, this person has felt pain. Just like me, this person wants to make a change. And just like me, this person wants to be loved. And when we focus on the compassion for that other person, we forget about ourselves. We forget about, why would someone want to listen to me? We're focusing on them and our compassion for them. That's key. Is that insightful? I wish I could tell you I was one of those coaches that's going to teach you how to break through all those limiting beliefs. I'm not. I'm a speaker coach, very philosophical and very practical too, but we have to figure our ways out around these subjects. I was telling Mark this the other day. I don't break through the walls. Sometimes I go under or ninja sneak around them or go over them. My darling is, you know, the American Ninja Warrior. Have you seen that TV show? So there's a Japanese version of it called Kurovi, and he actually beat the American Ninja Warrior guy. And a lot of the obstacles, it's not about busting through the obstacle. It's about going around and under and over. And sometimes when we come up against these things ourselves, especially our own ego, and I don't believe ego is a completely bad thing. I know it's very un-Buddhist to say, but our ego protects us. Our ego makes sure that we're safe. Our ego makes sure that we don't look like an idiot. When we can allow that to come in a way that's of best service, that makes us create on a higher level, that makes us rehearse. That's why my speakers rehearse over 200 times. One, because I ask, and they're very kind, and they're very formidable in that sort of sense, and they're also very resentful. I can't believe I have to do this 200 times. But at the same time, that part of the ego allows us to create something that's great so we can focus on someone else. When we have us start with compassion, that's when we can really focus our message to make sure that message is developed for them as well as continues to connect with them. So it's no longer about us anymore. Is that insightful? Did I answer your question? You sound like Max Headroom right now. Either that or you kind of sound like the Darvax from Doctor Who. Exterminate, exterminate. Okay, let's see if you catch up now. Is it just on my side? Is everyone else hearing this too? Well, Marc resets his settings. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. I know that the connection is you know, it's the internet. It goes up to space and back. What do we expect? Seriously. I think it's absolutely amazing that we get to connect in this way, because how often do we get this opportunity? How often do we get this chance to really connect on a heart-centered level, or not even just heart-centered, just like a real, like, hey, this is me. This is who I am. I have these ideas. I think they should be spread out into the world, but I don't know how to do it. And while Marc is figuring out his settings, I'll share about. The thing is, Allison, I want to follow up on your, Allison and Michael, I think I want to follow up on your question about how to go through that creation process. And people think once they spark their idea, that's sort of the end of the story. But if we continue on, we work through the different phases of creative speaking or innovative speaking. And we need to start working with how do we create? And we need to work on, first of all, you need to spark your idea. And then when we work on sparking your idea, then we can spark on the creation phase. And that's actually a long process. It's where we throw everything on a page and just ask our ego or our inner voice to sit to the side for just a few minutes while we create, or like a week or two. And then we work through the revision phase. And this is where it's really important to have your team. I call them the 7 samurai, because they're 7 people with distinct characteristics. Have you seen the movie The 7 Samurai? Or the American movie is The Magnificent Seven. And these characters are so different from each other. Oh, it's so hard to hear that. But can you reset, Marc? Is there a way that you can reset your audio? Okay, I'll be here. I'll vamp until you come back. We're cool like that. So yeah, so let me tell you about the 7 samurai, or the Magnificent Seven. So basically there's 7 samurai, one of the classic Japanese films. It starts off with this village it's a farming village, and the feudal lords are taking all of their crops. So they have nothing left for themselves. And they hire a samurai, but this is a ronin. This is a rogue samurai. If you've seen Westworld recently, you probably know that there was an episode where they had like these samurai that had no masters. So anyways, it's like the biggest shame. There must be something seriously wrong with you if you're a samurai without a master. So they hire the samurai and they say, hey, will you help us protect our village because the feudal lords are stealing our crops? And he says, how much you got for this? How much you going to pay me? And they say, nothing. He says, I'll do it. And so when he does it, he has to hire on 6 more samurai. So there's a total of 7. The thing is, again, Samurai without masters, they're a little off. There's something wrong with each and every one of them. Anger issues, alcoholism, you name it. There's something wacky about them that they can't fit into a regular samurai group. And he brings them all on board and they think they're going to save this village. But what happens instead is they not just save the village, but they teach the villagers how to save themselves. They don't fight. The villagers fight for themselves. And in turn, they also save their own souls. But here's the thing. We have to have a diverse group of people to take a look when we're doing our revision phase. People that understand the process, understand where you're coming from, understand what it's like to be a rogue samurai without a master. And they can give you the insights and perspective. Because if you start going outside to your network and your team, your people around you, they start giving you things that you can't really work with yet because you haven't been to that stage. You're still in a very sensitive, delicate area. So having people that you trust, that's why I call them the 7 samurai. So in all of my courses, we're all set up with 7 samurai from different learning acquisition types, different backgrounds and fields, and we work together.
7.
And then you're back. Okay, let me finish the last 2 just because I already started on this process. So that's the idea, procreation, revision, and then we work through the production. And this is where you start you're getting the crafting so that every line has impact. And it has to be very tight. And as you're in that rehearsal process going through it, it's 200 rehearsals, but you have to make sure that every line lands with impact. You've got 4 to 18 minutes in a TED style talk. So that's really important. And then the feedback phase is when you start going outside and going into your network, tapping into them and getting feedback from their perspective, because that'll help you prevent that what if it sucks feeling, because you know that you worked it really hard. You'll be able to solidify it. Thank you, Marc. Welcome back.
It's great to be back. So Soness, blast from the past, people showing up. We've got for those of you who want to know the link, you got to ask me how to get on the show. But more than that, you can actually interface with Soness. And I know that you're doing a couple webinars in the next couple days, Soness. Can you talk about what we're going to experience as you're doing some of these webinars? I think there's one for North America and then there's one for Europe.
That's right. That's right. Actually, I do things a little differently. Like I said, we do things differently around here. It's not a webinar per se. It's a workshop. Because I want to make sure that you get stuff done. Well, this is the interesting thing. I feel like a lot of webinars, you get a lot of lecture and theory, but without actionability. And we're all about taking action. Also, so that you can experience what it's like to be in one of my programs. It's a basically 2.5-hour workshop where we work through your ideas. So we figure out what's the spark of your idea? How do we create that? And how do we move it all the way through? Like, what is the process of getting booked to speak at TED or TEDx? So we move through that process. You actually get a workbook that comes with it. It's a 4-page workbook. Cha-cha. So your mastermind group went through this on Tuesday, and it's really fun. It's amazing. There's actually interactions. We break out into groups and do some pair work as well. So there's a lot. Your voice is really important. So everyone comes on camera so that we're feeling in a place of openness and acceptance so that we can really connect with each other and connect with the ideas. And that way you feel like you're in a safe place to express yourself. And a lot of people who've joined thought they didn't really have a TED-worthy idea. And they came to find, maybe, do I have one? And by the end of it, they left with that, wow, I do have a TED-worthy idea. And then how do we continue from there? So I invite you to come join. Marc will add the link because he's so kind to do so. So come join. There's one workshop for Europe, and there's one workshop for North America, that's including Canada and Mexico and South America. And then Australia, you get the best of both worlds, and so does everyone in Asia. So you can choose from both of them. Although I think if you're in New York, you can join the one for Europe at 5 a.m. if you wanted to, if you're an early bird like that. And Marc's like, not me. I'm not doing the 5 a.m. one.
For the early risers out there.
I've had several North Americans who like to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning who said, I want to join the 5 a.m. one.
Well, I think one of the things about, and this is just this is a personal statement about my experience so far, has been that number one, oftentimes we'll be pushing constructs when it comes to either a westernized system or a status quo. And what I love about Soness is that, like you're very fluid in terms of your thinking and the way that you work with us. I've seen it happen. I saw it happen with my group. My group showed up and wanted to do some more work with you. And so they took my personal coaching time out. But like, this is what I love, is to see my group be engaged. I've felt like we've gone to places where I want to go and ask you during our personal sessions, like, tell me more about Soness. And now you're offering up this workshop, and you're right. It doesn't feel like a webinar. You're there live with us, and we're being broken into groups. We've got worksheets in front of us. We're talking to other people through our systems and our ideas, our limiting beliefs, as I call them. And I just wanted to thank you. I want y'all to do this. Y'all have stuck around on a July 4th. I've been seeing fireworks going off right now in my from my office. I want you to like Soness. I want you to love Soness. I want you to want some more of Soness by clicking on her link, joining the workshop. It's right in front of you right now. It's also in the show notes. But also at the same time, Soness, you've had multiple stages, but I don't know if you're a busy person, so I don't know if you've seen the end of the Golden Mic Lives, but this is the part of the show where we call it the Golden Mic Live.
Oh my gosh.
This is the best part, Soness. So I wanted to thank you again. I want y'all to watch the replays if you're loving it, and share it out, please. But Soness, I want you to imagine a golden mic is now descending from your ceiling.
Okay.
And coming to a stop in front of you. And for 2 minutes or less, this golden mic will translate into every language all across the world. And your golden mic, Soness, in your golden mic, you'll get to say whatever it is that you want to say, whatever it is that you've wanted to say, or whatever you're practicing next. And Soness Stevens, you're on the Golden Mic Live starting now.
You, just as you are perfect. You have value. You have worth, and you make a contribution to the world. When you realize that, you will have a major impact, and the heart of healing and transformation for the world begins right now with you, just as you are, not waiting for tomorrow, not waiting for perfection, not waiting for one day when I'm at the right stage. Because today, just as you are at that stage. Bring your value, bring your worth, and bring a change. Thank you.
Soness, I want you to give me a fist pound, and I want you to pretend like that golden mic is in your hand, Soness Stevens. Okay. Now I want you to toss that golden mic down like it's hot, because you just blew it up. Soness Stevens just took the golden mic and lit it up. If Soness can do it and I can do it, anyone can take that golden mic. This has been episode 56. Soness, I hope to have you back at some point. I thank you. Everyone who's been watching, please share this out. Jump on the golden mic with me. Imagine it coming down. And remember one final thing. If you're feeling good and you're living life to your full purpose, what is your responsibility to the greater good? My name's Marc Cordone. We're going to be back tomorrow for one more day. Soness, thank you so much. Arigato.
Arigato gozaimasu. Thank you so much.
Yeah.